Welcome back. Now, the Constitutional Court has dismissed Malusi Gigaba's application for leave to appeal a court ruling that he lied under oath. The matter related to the Oppenheimer-owned Fireblade Aviation case. Now, the Home Affairs Minister says he didn't give the family permission to run a private terminal at OR Tambo International Airport. But the family disputes this, saying he did agree to it. Now, to discuss this further, Fireblade Aviation Chairperson Nicky Oppenheimer joins me in studio now. Mr. Oppenheimer, thank you very much for your time. I want to start this conversation this way. Given the scandal surrounding the Minister of Home Affairs, Malusi Gigaba, do you believe he should be fired?
I think that's not for me to have a view on. I mean, what the courts have found is that he lied under oath. I don't think a minister of our country, of South Africa, should be found to have lied under oath. But any decision there rests with the president.
But how does he survive such a scandal that he lied before a court of law? And that, as we learned this week, is actually, it amounts to a violation of the Constitution if you listen to what the public protector is saying.
No, I think, those are simply the facts. Obviously, the president has to apply his mind. Everybody will have an opinion. As I say, I don't think it's right for a minister in our government to have been found to lie under oath. I think that's inappropriate.
Do you have confidence in his ability to do the job?
Well, in this case, which is our experience with the Minister and Home Affairs, obviously it's been disappointing. And the worst part about it is this whole process, the journey through the courts, should never have taken place. I was in the meeting with the Minister when he told me that he had granted his approval. And from that, he argued before the courts that that was not true. Every court, 4 courts now, have all found that his arguments bore no weight, and each one of them in turn have found that he told untruths under oath.
Let's talk about the setting up of this Fireblade terminal at OR Tambo Airport. Talk me through what exactly was the nature of this agreement, because as we hear today, even from the chairperson of the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee in Parliament, he says there's no written agreement, yet you continue to operate this terminal.
No, it's not quite as simple as that. If I can step back in history for a second, both my son and I are pilots, and we have a passion for aviation. And we were looking for opportunities to invest in South Africa, and it immediately seemed to us that there was an opportunity to set up a terminal at OR Tambo, which would be solely for non-commercial, non-scheduled traffic. And we did a lot of research into this, and it certainly made us good and sound business case. And so we then engaged with the various stakeholders who required, starting with AXA, the Airport Company of South Africa, and then Denel, who leased land from AXA. And on the Denel site, we identified another site which would have made a very good terminal for non-scheduled aircraft, and so we entered into a lease with them. And then we committed to build. And through that process, we obviously had to engage with a number of government bodies. Now, key to our business plan was that the state should provide customs and immigration at this terminal. And as it was a new concept, we actually ended up having to get 27 different approvals from different government bodies, all of which approved, until the point where the only outstanding approval was that of the Minister of Home Affairs. Now, you can say there's no formal agreement, but all those agreements are noted and on paper, and then the Minister himself gave the final approval.
So you're saying to me those 27
yes.
government entities you spoke to, you have written agreements with them. The only one outstanding is that of Home Affairs.
That was the only agreement outstanding, and then the Minister, in a meeting where, as I say, where I was present, told me that he was delighted that he was able to confirm that he had now given his approval, signed a letter to that effect, which he did not give to me, but said he had it in his safe and would give it to us as soon as the necessary operating practices were established, and that should take about a week's time. And then there was a series of interactions after that which confirmed that decision, all of which were taken into account when the courts decided whether my version of events was right or the minister's was.
In your view, what caused him to renege on giving you that agreement, that signed agreement that you said it was kept away?
The thing that triggered it, according to the minister, was a change in heart from Denel, who up to then had been completely supportive of our proposal to have a terminal of this nature there. What caused Denel to change its mind? I don't know. The only thing that did happen is shortly before this, there was a change in the Denel board, but whether that had impact on it or not is, I actually don't know.
Does it sit well with you, Mr. Oppenheimer, that you continue to operate that terminal as we speak without this signed agreement with Home Affairs? Because also what's important here to highlight is that taxpayers' money is also being used by virtue of the services that are delivered at that terminal by these various other departments.
There are two elements here. First is domestic flights, and the second were international flights for which the state, as you say, have to provide services. Domestic flights started in 2014, and there have been approximately 14,000 through our terminal in that time to date. International flights requiring the state to provide services only commenced after the minister gave his approval and after the court had opined, when he said he didn't, that he was lying under oath. And so that only happened subsequent to that. Quite rightly, you say, state provides services and taxpayers' money is provided for that. It's not something that is unusual. But there are other privately owned airports, Lenasia, Kruger and Mpumalanga, both privately owned, and state provides services there at no cost to either of those entities. And I think you can even go further and say AXA, Airports Company of South Africa. It is a parastatal, but it's not government, and government, quite rightly, as is required of them, provides services there and at all international points of entry or points of departure.
Who gave final approval for this terminal to operate? And I speak here in particular between yourselves and the Home Affairs Department. Was it the Director General? Was it Malusi Gigaba himself, the minister?
Well, as I say, I was in the meeting with him where he said, I have given approval and I have signed the letter. So I assume it was him.
So this document then, which is dated 1 April, are you aware of this document? It appears to have been signed by you, and there's a paragraph there that talks about this almost being a done deal, where it mentions the name Jackie McKay, the DG of the Home Affairs Department. Was that the person you were dealing with?
No, Jackie McKay was very much involved, and that was a letter. There was a continual interaction with Home Affairs from the time we first opened offering domestic services from 2014, and we fully expected the final agreement for the state to provide the necessary services for international flights at any moment. I mean, we were continually told this week, next week. And so it went on until finally the meeting in January 2018. You must get my years right. But anyway, with the minister, where he did say that he had granted his approval.
Did you ever approach the ANC for either the setting up or final approval of this terminal?
No, because it was, well, not for final approval. We certainly engaged with as many people as possible. My son and I actually bore people to death about Fireblade, and quite a lot of my friends, when I say Fireblade, get a very glazed look in their eye. No, anybody who had wanted to know anything about Fireblade, we were delighted to engage with them, as we are today. We're extraordinarily proud of our facility, and we like nothing more than blowing the trumpet about it. We think it's a great advertisement for South Africa.
So at the moment, you wouldn't have any recollection of whether or not yourself or your son, Jonathan, may have approached the ANC?
No, we certainly engaged with them and talked to them about Fireblade.
You did?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so therefore you would be aware of this document dated 5 November 2015?
Yeah, the letter from Mr. Ignatius Jacobs, absolutely. And if you read the letter, what does it say? That we're following due and proper process, and I was pleased to hear that.
But didn't it strike you as strange that the governing party was getting into government matters where there ought to be a separation between party and state. Didn't that strike you as odd, that the governing party is getting into the business of actually you setting up there?
Well, at the end of the day, I think I hope they understood, just as we always understood, that the decision rested with the Minister of Home Affairs. I mean, we could get a letter from Mr. or Dr. Ignatius Jacobs saying that we were following due process, and we took comfort from that. But there was no doubt in our mind that the final decision had to come from the minister.
Yeah, but what authority did Ignatius Jacobs have? Did you ever question that?
No, and I assumed none, because he is not part of government.
Mr. Oppenheimer, the reason I ask these questions, at the moment, I'm sure you'll understand that the country is seized with the matter of so-called state capture.
Absolutely.
At the heart of it, the Gupta's influence on government and, in particular, members of the governing party, the ANC. Is that something that sits well with you, that you go through all these processes in order to get whatever it is that you want? Is that how you've always conducted your business? And given what we know now today, given this whole state capture business, does that sit well with you?
No, I think obviously when you have something new, which this was, you look to inform as many people as possible about what you're doing. And if anybody expresses, as I say, anybody expresses any interest, you can hardly stop me talking about Fireblade. But we knew, and we've always known from the very start of this process, that decision rested with government and with Home Affairs. And those were the people who would have to give us permission.
But approaching the ANC would also, in the public's mind, insinuate that you were applying pressure from all fronts, including going to the government party.
No, I don't think that's right, and it was certainly not. We certainly weren't looking to apply pressure. What we were looking to do was inform people about what we were planning to do at Fireblade, what it was set up to do. And as I say, anybody ask me, I'll bore you to death about it as well, given half a chance.
Mr. Oppenheimer, why does the family feel the need to have a private terminal at a national key point such as Tambo International Airport? Is this something that rich people, privileged people want to do?
No, absolutely. I think you have to define two things. Fireblade is privately owned. Lanseria is privately owned. Kruger Mpumalanga is privately owned. The service we offer is not exclusively for the Oppenheimer family. We're in a business. We're intending to make money, and we think we look carefully at this, and we believe it is a business opportunity where one can make money, and something that needs to happen in South Africa. As I said to you earlier, once we started operating domestic, and more recently from February of this year, international flights, some 14,000 flights have passed through Fireblade. 5% of those have been for the family. Hardly a private thing just for the family.
How much did it cost you to set up this private?
It cost us 150 million rand to build the facility. Obviously, like any business, you don't make money the day you open your doors. And as I said to you earlier, our business plan has always been that international flights needed to pass through Fireblade and services be provided by the state in order to move from something that was sort of break-even to something where you would start making money. So we haven't made money yet, so we've incurred costs since 2014, and so we're looking forward, hopefully in the future, to make money. I should say that at a terminal like this, you ask the question, how do you make money? What services do you provide? The key thing is you need to be a petrol station, and you actually make your money out of selling Jet A1 fuel. Domestic flights, by their very nature, take very little fuel. International flights, which fly much longer in bigger aircraft, take a great deal more fuel. And that's why a fundamental part of our business plan from the very start, has communicated to Denel, AXA, and the government from the very start when we first proposed this, was that there should be the facility for international flights to pass through Fireblade.
I want to take us back to the issue of political influence. If Malusi Gigaba comes back and says there was undue pressure on him from the Oppenheimer family. How will you respond?
I would say that's completely untrue. And if he felt threatened or anyway under pressure, he should have said so. But we've never done anything that would have put undue pressure. We simply asked the Minister of Home Affairs through the best part of 4 years to give us the necessary permission to study our case, see that it was good and valid, and give us the necessary authority that the state would provide those services at Fireblade, which he did.
Did you, during this whole process, particularly at a time when he reneged from this agreement, did you hear anything about a possible involvement of the Gupta family? Were you aware of anything like that?
No, I have no idea. I mean, the only connection we had with the Gupta family, well, there was a moment when Fireblade looked after their aircraft. And they paid their bills, and they seemed like reasonable customers. But we decided that they weren't actually the sort of customers we wanted to deal with.
Why not?
Well, there was an incident at Fireblade, and you know, what I'm saying is there is no proof in what I'm saying, but there was an incident at Fireblade where the Gupta well, not the Gupta family, but there was a Gupta aircraft which was going to fly internationally, and some luggage came. This was prior to the days when we had international services, so, and a luggage came to be loaded onto that aircraft. It was put through our security screening services, which we have up, you know, the X-ray machines like you have at any airport, and our operator wasn't happy with what was in the suitcase.
What was in the suitcase?
I have no idea. And said to the person who brought it, please open the suitcase. The person refused to do that and took the suitcase away. Now, as I say, this was prior to us being, the state being on site to operate international flights, so there was no way we could seize the suitcase or do anything like that. But after that incident, which we immediately reported to the security services at OR Tambo, we sort of thought these were, you know, that there was a reputational risk here, and we terminated our arrangements with the Gupta family.
So, but I want to hear the finality of this suitcase. So, in the end, did the person, you know, move along with the luggage onto the flight?
No, they took the luggage away. Didn't take it airside. Remained landside, put it back in his car and drove away.
Also, he didn't proceed through the airport. Just finally, just out of curiosity, Mr. Oppenheimer, I saw you at Parliament on Tuesday, and seated right next to you was a very prominent ANC figure there, former Premier of the Northern Cape, Nicky Oppenheimer. What's his role in the Oppenheimer business operation?
Now, Manny's our partner in Fireblade, and my relationship with Manny goes back a very long way, from the time when he was a shop steward at De Beers, and so then the relationship was not necessarily of the friendliest, but I've always had a regard for him. And when it came to find a partner for De Beers, I thought Nicky Oppenheimer was the right man. And I don't see him as a BE partner. I see him as our partner in the business.
I see. Thank you very much for your time, Nicky Oppenheimer, the chairperson of Fireblade Aviation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Pleasure.